Edna hummed as she strode into her butcher's shop. She'd had a good night's rest and was ready to take on the labors of the day. Walking through the front with its display shelves empty, she kept them empty to save on the power bill, as they were all refrigerated, always gave her a feeling of opportunity. She looked to her little glass counter that would be filled with cuts of meat soon, ready for customers looking for just about anything, and smiled. The two corner displays with no shelves, where she would hang large cuts of beef or pork ribs or sometimes even whole birds that she got in, were calling to her to fill them. Though she wanted to stock up all of the empty spaces and start selling, she knew that it would have to wait. There was an order to fill early this morning, and 6 carcasses hung to be bled through the night that needed cutting down and delivering. She passed by her counter and flashed at her smile while getting to the upbeat, faster middle section of her humming tune. With a higher-pitched da-da-da, she swung open the door to the back butchering area. The door was dimly lit by 2 large windows in the back. Most butchers avoided large windows in any room but the front where they sold the meat. Heat is the festerer of meat, was the saying she'd heard from her father growing up, but she just loved the sun too much to shut it out fully, so she'd found a way to let it in without spoiling the meats. Each window was tinted and was put in much higher than normal on the wall. The heat that did manage to make it through the tinting would rise 1.5 feet from the ceiling. She still remembered the measurements, and would either stay there, cool down, or get absorbed into the boards of the ceiling. She didn't quite know which of those it would do, but it didn't matter because it let her have that small amount of sunlight while not letting anyone see inside while she worked, which was enough for her. The sunlight wasn't enough light to work by, so she tugged on the pull cord that dangled near the door, and the room was filled with industrial strength lighting that carved away the darkness. The single round light in the center of the room shone bright white over her carving table. Her table was a deep brown made of stained pine wood that wouldn't show bloodstains so much that it was unsightly, but just enough so she could properly scrub them up. Coming to the slower back end of her humming tune, she grabbed her apron off the wall, which was a similar shade of brown to her table, and walked over to that table. She tied on her apron, tossed a butchering sheet over the table to help with the stains. This one was bright white, so she knew what ones had been used during the day and what ones hadn't, and came to the single long note ending of her tune as she walked to the refrigerator. The air was sharp and chilled inside, but Edna was used to it after so many years of daily trips inside. The cold that had once set her skin into goosebumps and made her bones feel brittle with chill now almost felt like a second home. She passed by the boxes of beef, pork, and poultry from the display cases she'd put away the night before, and toward the criminal corpses. She'd hung them from large metal hooks, piercing their hands to hang them, then piercing the heart and thigh arteries with a large carving knife. Their flesh was pale, almost white with the loss of blood, and would make the meat taste all the better. Looking at them, she figured this might be how they were locked in prison, at some point, hung by their wrists by chains and cuffs, and given meals instead of being them. Scum didn't deserve it, and now they'd be put to good use for society. She didn't feel any anger towards them. She felt the opposite, in fact. She took great pride in her work and the mouths that work fed. There was nothing better in life than helping people, after all. Helping these horrible souls have some redemption through the final act of nourishing the good and helping the unfortunate have a proper meal. She hoisted a body down using the chain's pulley mechanisms to maneuver it onto a rolling cart she'd left in the fridge the other day after bringing them in. She unhooked it and rolled it out to the carving table. Lifting with her legs and not her back, as her daddy had always taught her, she lifted the body onto the carving table and turned around to grab a small tablet device off the counter behind her. "Let's see here." She turned, pulling out a key with a square tip, and slotted it into a chest she had hidden under the counter. It clicked and she popped the lid open, revealing several files she'd stowed away. She pulled the first one in the row and thumbed it open. "Ron Davidson, I remember you. I couldn't believe they let you out on parole after only 10 years. You deserved the whole 50. Doesn't matter much now, I suppose." She turned her eyes from the file to the corpse. "You made yourself into this piece of meat, Ron, when you killed your wife so you could keep the house, the car, the boat, all of it. You stopped being a person and became a slab of meat. No real person would kill people just for some things." She put a large amount of emphasis on the real, making it sound more like a real, then smiled and pulled a large butcher's knife from her apron. It was a routine day of carving for Edna. First she'd skin the body and toss that old sack away. Next, she'd gone to each joint, chopping hard and fast with her butcher's knife to separate the pieces for easier work. She'd filleted the meat off the bones with a thinner, skinnier blade that she kept razor sharp. When the filleting was done, she ran the meat through a machine to cube it. She fed the meat through the top, hit a few buttons on the touch display, and a piston pushed the meat through a crisscross of blades that made it come out as mostly long rectangles. Then came another blade from the top of the machine that cut it into 1-inch cubes. There were the odd bits and ends that came through as strips or round cuts, but it didn't matter as far as the soup goes. When she was done with all 6, Edna packed them up into 2 industrial crates wrapped in butcher paper and loaded them onto the truck. Her truck was little, but she loved it. It had a small rectangular cabin with a big engine underneath the floorboards that it needed because the bed was so much larger. She could haul and haul in this thing, running deliveries all day, but today she only had one. Turning the key, the truck came to life, and Edna drove off toward the soup kitchen. Edna hummed another tune as she drove, this time along with the music coming from her radio. While she drove, she liked to watch people who were out and about along her route. She watched several people who stepped onto a long moving sidewalk belt that would carry them to the subway. Most didn't have any kind of bag, suitcase, or load at all. Lazy, lazy. Does no good not to walk. Gotta exercise your legs sometimes. She raised a hand and shook her finger at a line of people who were too engrossed in their phones to notice, then giggled to herself. She turned right onto Elm Street, and the crates in the back made a loud thud against the side of her truck bed as they slid. Edna didn't take notice. She was too lost in her thoughts about the construction that had recently finished here. A new superstore had been put in, and she wanted to get a good look at it. It was a huge concrete building that either hadn't been painted or had been painted stone gray. It was a big, all-gray rectangular building, except 3 yellow triangles at the left, middle, and right front of it that read Garden, Home, and Auto. She made a left at the end of the building to get a look at the side. Thud. The side had a little drive-through bank window that would be convenient every now and then. She turned left again, around the backside. Thud. Nothing but a loading area was back behind the building. She turned so she was on the right side. Thud. Maybe she would have to stop by and see if there was anything good to get in there on her way back, she thought as she turned back onto Elm Street. Thud. She pulled into the back parking lot of the soup kitchen just 10 minutes later. The back door was propped open and Mindy was waiting for her. Mindy was always there to accept deliveries on time. Proper punctuality is close to proper perfection, she would always say. Edna turned off the engine and got out of the truck. Hi, Mindy. How are you doing today? Mindy walked toward the truck bed to help Edna unload. I am doing just fine. We got a big shipment of carrots and potatoes from the great fields that look like it'll be fantastic for the soup. Edna turned to her, put a hand on her hip, and made a mock upset face with a large frown. Well, heck, if you've got all of those nice vegetables, why would you need any of this from me? She waved her other hand across the crates on the truck bed. A good soup needs protein, Mindy said exaggeratingly, rolling her eyes, and the 2 women laughed together. Let's get this beef in there. I already got the stock boiling with, and no one keeping an eye on it. Mindy was gasping every couple words, out of breath from laughing. Mindy, of course, didn't know it wasn't beef in the crates. She'd have Edna arrested, and Edna couldn't do any good deeds from a cell. The 2 pulled Edna's dolly from the truck bed and loaded the crates onto it. Edna's hand came away from the second crate covered in a red, sticky meat juice. She figured one of the crates must have cracked open a bit and wiped it on her apron. Mindy had tried pushing it into the soup kitchen under the reasoning that Edna had already pushed it once from her shop, so it was only polite, but Edna had countered that it was only polite to deliver it properly and had started pushing the dolly before Mindy got the chance to object. Inside the soup kitchen it smelled like boiled beef stock and sweat. The windows were wide open, but when a crowd of a couple hundred people all ram into a building, ventilation can only do so much. The heat from the large burner with a pot almost as tall as Edna didn't help much with the heat either. She guided the dolly over to it and slowly put it down, sliding it out from under the crates. Well, thank you very much, Eddie, Mindy said, putting her hand on Edna's shoulder. My pleasure. That soup does smell good, doesn't it? Edna took in a deep breath through her nose. Of course it does. My cooking always smells good. It was Mindy's turn to make a mock upset face. Always smells good, yeah. Tastes about a 50-50 on whether it's good or bad, Edna said, and the women had another laugh together. Well, at least everybody here seems to like it. Mindy gestured to the crowd sitting at the tables, who seemed more eager now that the meat had arrived. Mindy, taking note, unhinged the lid of the top crate. Well, you know why, Edna said, leaning down and unhinging the other side. Oh, do I? Mindy raised an eyebrow in an exaggerated, inquisitive look. Why would that be? They raised the lid together, revealing the cubes of bright red meat within. Because they got nowhere else to eat, so of course they like your cooking. The two women laughed together again. This time Edna was grabbing at her stomach. She'd laughed so hard. Oh, Eddie, that's terrible. The women raised the crate and poured the meat into the pot of boiling stock. It made a huge splashing sound as the pieces fell and began to boil. I know, but it's funny, Edna said, moving the crate out of the way, as Mindy began on the hinges of the other. Well, it did make me laugh, so I guess you got me. The two hoisted the second crate and poured the meat contents in. There was a second splash, and it was followed by a loud hiss, as this time some stock spilled out onto the burner over the side of the pot. Mindy began stirring the pot with a paddle, while Edna packed the crates back onto the dolly, as a young boy dressed in an old t-shirt and shorts Edna had seen here a few times came up to the serving counter. Mindy turned to him, still stirring. Hi there, Benny. Hi, Miss Mindy. I came to ask if I could have 3 servings of soup today. Benny noticed Edna, looked to her, then looked back to Mindy, his eyes a little nervous. It's not extra for me, or Mom, I promise. Adam's starting to eat food. Mindy tilted her head, looking at Benny. Adam's that old already? She seemed earnestly shocked to Edna. Well, how about this? I'll give you your 2 servings, and I'll make another smaller serving with extra vegetables. They'll be softer and mushier, so he doesn't choke. She smiled at Benny, who smiled back. Thank you, Mrs. Mindy. Benny stood at the counter, seeming to be intent on waiting there until it was ready. I'm heading back to the shop, Mins. I'm sure your soup will turn out great. Edna smiled at Mindy, who was now staring deep into the pot as she poured in one of the 5 buckets of carrots she had nearby. Mindy smiled, still staring into the pot. I know it will. Have a good day, Eddie. Take care. Edna walked out to the truck and loaded the crates and dolly back into the bed. Turning the key, she felt a tinge of excitement, thinking about how her beautiful display cases she'd get to go and fill now. She'd done a great deed today, as she had done a few times before. She'd helped feed the homeless, and given them the proper protein they needed. She'd even helped a soul that was surely burning in hell redeem themselves by putting their body to good use. It was going to be a good day running the shop. She could just feel it. She put the truck in drive and forgot to stop by the new superstore on her way back to the shop. This has been Butchery, written by Grayska Voice, voiced by Grayska Voice. Like and subscribe for more.